Good morning. Good morning. I'll give a few minutes. I see people are joining. We are excited to welcome our guests and you back for our first fall episode. We'll give a couple minutes. Thank you as you all are joining. This is an exciting day, a lot to talk about in a little bit of time, but we want to make sure we're able to get you out of here by 10 o'clock. And so I will start as people continue to join. I just want to first say good morning to everyone. I want to welcome you to our first downtown download of the fall. It is so great being back with my co-host, Councilman Costello, and we have an important show for you this morning. You know, our region's oldest business district and largest here is in downtown Baltimore. It's also the city's fastest growing residential neighborhood, according to both the 2010 and 2020 census data. And we know that there are some exciting things happening here, such as the redevelopment of the arena, the campus project that's going up in the old Superblock site. We know our theaters and cultural attractions are fully reopened now. And earlier this year, I had the pleasure of joining Governor Hogan and Maryland State Senate President Bill Ferguson when they announced the $50 million coming to state funds to support moving more than 3,000 agencies and employees into this area. So we know that there are plenty of reasons to be optimistic, and yet we are also real about some of the challenges that we have. We know that some prominent businesses have recently moved out of the district. The good news is they're still within the area of what we consider downtown, but we know that that also leaves an opportunity and some narrative and conversations around what's happening with the traditional core. And so we know as we do that, that it's our job, right, to help make this area of downtown a destination of choice. And so this morning, we are here to really talk about what's realistic, look at what's happening, what isn't in the CBD, and to talk about what we need to do in this area to be successful moving forward. First, let me stick to some of the traditional things we do. I want to talk about a few announcements that we have. Downtown Partnership had our annual meeting last week. For me, it was my first live meeting. And so I thank you all for showing up and showing out. It was magical in what was happening. Not that it was Pollyanna and what happened, but you saw people who wanted to connect in a way, and they came out, they did it. I'm just honored that Mayor Scott, Council President Mosby, they made several announcements. Have to shout out our title sponsor, BGE. I mean, really did all of that. Thank you, Councilman Costello. I know I'm gonna give you the mic in a minute, so I won't give you all of the kudos. I will say to all of our award winners, congratulations, especially you, Councilman Costello. We made 3 major announcements. I won't steal all of the thunder, Councilman. I know you may come back and talk about some of those a little bit more in depth. I know we're not going through all of that this session, but the mayor and council supported reauthorizing the 3 tax credits, a big deal. CHAP, the newly constructed dwelling tax credit, and the high performance market rate tax credit. And really, I know we can go into a lot more of that. The mayor signed the legislation creating the special district for large format signage along the Pratt Street corridor. This district comes with quality controls around video signage, buildings, and adding to the facades. One thing that I do want to say about this is we're getting a lot more media on it. We're doing a lot more in community outreach. As a resident of downtown, as a lover of this city, I care about creating things that make a difference for our area. So we don't want to do anything that's going to detract from that. And I'm excited that my team has really taken that full to heart. We're doing all of our due diligence, have engaged consultants looking at best practices, because we really want to make this area special for our city. And finally, the last thing I'll say today is we launched the partnership's newest marketing campaign. It's called Double Down on Downtown. This campaign features prominent business leaders talking about the Central Business District's core assets. We know what we have here. We know the good things that we have. So let's talk about and celebrate some of those things. The last thing I want to say before I toss it over to you, Councilman Costello, is we do have an upcoming real estate reception that we're holding on November 4th. It's going to be at the Redwood campus. And this is great. So we do these real estate receptions almost quarterly now. This one will feature Vicinity, Metropolitan Partnership, M&T Bank. I think we'll also have someone from the University of Maryland there. This is really great with us being able to showcase what's happening in various parts of downtown. So I encourage you all to register. All of this information can be found on our website at godowntownbaltimore.com. A lot I was trying to say. I got it in the 5 minutes, Councilman. So now I am turning it over to you.
Thanks, Shelonda. I know we didn't go anywhere, but it feels great to be back, and really looking forward to the real estate reception at the Redwood Campus Center. I had an opportunity to tour the site about 2 months ago, and Carrie Ewer and Wayne Barber, who are no strangers to most of our audience, just did a fantastic job with that project. One quick update on the tax credit reauthorizations that you mentioned. We're going to be moving forward with a council committee hearing for all three of those bills on Tuesday, November 9th. That's the CHAP reauthorization, the newly constructed dwelling tax credit reauthorization, and the high performance market rate tax credit reauthorization. We expect to get those passed out of the City Council on November 15th. We understand how critically important those credits are to continuing to grow our city, how important they are to not just downtown, but the surrounding neighborhoods. So we'll be moving very expeditiously on that. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Shelonda.
Thank you so much, Councilman. One thing I didn't say, and I don't know how I forgot him even in the speaking, but I have to give a shout out to Dick Cass, president of the Ravens. He really is our keynote for that event, brought it down. So now I will talk about our guests today. I see them here, they're ready. We're here early in the midst of, did anybody outside of me experience traffic coming into downtown? Wasn't that great this morning? I know, it's so exciting. Who knew we wanted traffic again? But our guests today are exactly what we had in mind when we launched the Double Down on Downtown campaign. With us are Gregory Farno, president of the Maryland region at Truist Bank, and Jon Laria, managing partner at the law firm Ballard Spahr. Both committed members of Downtown Partnership. I thank you for that. To our board, both recently announced major recommitments to the Baltimore Central Business District, and they are uniquely qualified to assess its strengths and its needs, right? So Greg has spent a distinguished career in banking, originally from New England. He's now one of Baltimore's biggest boosters with services on boards of the Greater Baltimore Committee, the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore, and the Living Classrooms Foundation. Truist is the newly formed bank that resulted from the merger of BB&T and SunTrust. And when these institutions came together, they could have cited their regional headquarters anywhere. And I'm excited that they really took a hard look around and decided to stay here. Just last week, the Truist sign became the newest in our city skyline. So if you're following us on social, you saw that. So shout out to two of Greg's colleagues I want to highlight who sit on our board. Eric Thompson, he sits on our Downtown Management Authority board, and Carrie Schreiber, who I love tremendously. She's been an outstanding treasurer of our board for both the DMA and the Downtown Partnership Board. And so just thank you for that. Jon, want to highlight you, managing partner at Ballard Spahr, specializing in commercial real estate transactions. He's also a member of Ballard's expanded board and sits on the firm's diversity council. I had an opportunity to spend a good amount of time with him in Philly. He's really a partner looking at how he brings new ideas and developments into the city, and I'm appreciative of that. I don't know where he finds the time though, because I know you're heavily civic minded. You were the founding chair of the Maryland Sustainable Growth Commission for the General Assembly. He's also been involved in several local organizations like our friends at Live Baltimore, and he's a regular in City Hall. I want to highlight at Ballard Spahr, one of our executive committee members, Mark Pollack, who is also on Ballard's team. So I'm going to turn things over to you, Councilman, for our prepared questions. I do want to remind our guests that please put your questions in the Q&A box below after we get through some of the earlier, Councilman always throws in a hardball question, but after we get through those, we want to come back and we want to really answer your questions today. So Councilman, I'm coming back to you.
Thank you, Shelonda. And first and foremost, Greg and Jon, thank you for your commitment to Baltimore City and specifically to downtown. We know that you guys could have gone anywhere, but we're thrilled that you made the decision to stay downtown. And it really means the world to us, so thank you. Before we get into the specifics about your work in Baltimore, I want to start with maybe a 30,000-foot view. Just talk about how your industries have been impacted by COVID. Greg, if we can start with you, digitization was already changing the way banks service their customers before COVID-19. Now that we're about a year and a half into the pandemic, How has banking changed over that period of time?
Great question, Councilman. And let me start though by just thanking the Downtown Partnership and Shelonda for organizing this, and including Truist. We appreciate it. Also, want to just say the meeting last Tuesday was fabulous. For anybody that was there, you know what I'm talking about. It was great to be in person. It was great to be outdoors, and it was a great program. So thank you. Getting back to the question, let me start with Truist was created, as Shelonda said, in December of 19 when BB&T and SunTrust merged. So it's not a name that might be as common as BB&T or SunTrust, but I wanted to give that context. So we were 3 months into the largest bank merger since prior to the financial crisis when COVID hit. So believe me, there was nothing in the banking manual that told us how to handle those two phenomena. But it created a lot of change, and digitization was certainly one very profound aspect of that. Let me just talk about it for a second. And I've got some facts. Bankers love data. So the move to digital certainly had started pre-pandemic, but the pandemic really accelerated it. And we saw it most vividly with PPP loans, where literally overnight, the banking system needed to process tens of thousands of loans in a way that we had never done before. But here's just some data to kind of underscore that point. So when I'm speaking about Truist here, year to date in 2021, we are 5% up in digital accounts. We're 11% year-to-date growth in mobile app users. We're 17% year-to-date growth in mobile check deposit transactions. And year-to-date, we're 57% over where we were last year in Zelle transaction. So clearly, digitization and delivering banking digitally is extremely popular and something that our customers are very, very interested in. But one of the things we think about is that we want to be there in whatever way our clients want to meet us. So if that's a digital platform, it's really, really important to have a great digital platform. Just think about some of the statistics I just laid out for everybody. That's not going to change anytime soon. But there's also a large part of our customers that like an in-person experience. So our thinking is we want to meet our customers where they want to be met. One of the key strategies that we've had from the beginning of the merger is something we call T3. So first is touch. It's really important for Truist teammates to connect with our customers. And that's the touch aspect. But to your question, what is becoming increasingly important and won't change anytime soon is technology, such as digital banking. But that's only one example. And we feel if we can deliver the touch and the technology, we'll create trust. And trust is the foundation of any great banking relationship. But you've got to have both. And maybe historically, touch was enough. It isn't any longer. You've got to have the technology. So that's kind of a, long-winded answer to your question around digitization, but it's a real phenomena. It accelerated during COVID, and I think it'll continue to accelerate in the future.
Thank you, Greg. And Jon, same for you in the practice of law, whether it's video depositions or virtual administrative hearings or virtual, court hearings. Talk to us a little bit about how that's radically altered the way attorneys do business.
Yeah. Thanks. Can you all hear me? I'm taking notes on touch, tech, trust, Truist. This is, Greg, you guys have got it worked out. we got some catching up to do on the marketing side. So a bit about Ballard Spahr. We have people know us in Baltimore, hopefully reasonably well, but we actually have 15 offices around the country. We have 700 lawyers. We have thousands of people. And that's interesting because this whole COVID experience has taught us a lot about how to function as one firm and also how to function in different places. Because the truth is that those different places are in many different sizes of cities, different cultures. And as we've all experienced, the different places have processed and coped with and responded to this pandemic in different ways. So we've seen the Baltimore experience, but we've tried to tie it to the larger firm. And the issue really is not whether we can work remotely. The issue is whether we want to. That's the question, because we love to see our clients and we hope they love to see us. But in truth, it hasn't really affected our client service delivery. Greg has a lot of retail customers. Our customers tend to be, and he has commercial customers as well. Our customers tend to be almost exclusively commercial level, not retail, not individuals. And as a result, they're working in fairly sophisticated environments themselves. And we managed to communicate somehow in one weekend, last March of 2020, we pivoted to this environment. And although we've improved upon it incrementally and sometimes in big ways over the last year and a half, it's really just been our client service delivery has been extraordinary, which is a tribute to many people here at the firm. Without it's really been unbelievable. But frankly, some indicator of that is the firm is doing tremendously well economically. We couldn't do that if we weren't producing legal services and working and staying in touch with and doing a good job for our clients. But that is a different question, and I hope we'll get to this, because I think it really relates to both of what we're trying to do here and what every business is trying to do with respect to the internal workings of the place, their employees, their the team spirit, all of those kind of day-to-day things, which then of course gets to the perils of working from home, perils of working remotely. It obviously has an impact, therefore, on downtown. So I think those are things that I'd like to hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about, Councilman and Shelonda. But so laws changed, but we are managing quite well to execute our responsibilities and discharge our responsibilities on behalf of clients. I think our responsibilities to our own people right now is what we're really focused on, making sure that we figure out as we try and get people to return to the office. And I would say that we did reopen in a partial way on October the 4th, and maybe we can talk a little bit about what that looks like as well, both here and at Truist and at your places.
Oh, John, that's a great segue. And, I remember I've been to your office a number of times for meetings over the years. And I recall back in April of 2020, the first meeting I attended at your office in person, and this was after the pandemic was underway. And I remember looking around, it kind of looked like a ghost town, right? And folks weren't in, but you were talking to me a little bit about how you guys were adapting at Ballard. And how folks were teleworking and some of the desires of some of the newer attorneys to want to be in person in the office. Can you talk to us a little bit about how, as you guys thought through this new lease and staying in downtown, how you thought about how much space you would need and what changes to the way that you operate would kind of become permanent or enhanced, similar to what Greg said about digitization as you thought about your space needs?
Sure, that's obviously a question that's been very much on our minds. We were already we've been in our current space for almost 30 years, the entire time that we've had an office in Baltimore. And while we have actually undergone one major and several minor renovations, this was a chance to really rethink the space. And we had already, aside from COVID, we'd already decided to make some very fundamental changes. One major change is single-sized offices, as you know, to the traditional law firm environment, sort of, bigger offices, smaller offices. We are not very hierarchical here, I hope. And we don't need, we didn't think we needed, and our other offices that have done this have found that they didn't need to have this giant disparity of office space. And we have nice, really efficient offices that affected a little bit our planning, Councilman, to begin with, without regard to COVID. But obviously, there was the question of how many people would be coming to work in the future and how did that affect things. And we've done multiple surveys across the firm over the period of the pandemic. And we determined, if given their druthers, some people have said that they want to be here 5 days a week. And there are people who have been here 5 days a week since the moment we allowed them to come in. That's just the way they are. That's the way they want to practice. That's the way they want to work. And we've permitted that with limited numbers, with strict protocols. Other people have said, I'd be happy to work from home every day. I don't need to come in ever. And, I can appreciate that. And we have some people who do that already for other reasons related to family obligations or others. We've always tried to be flexible, and we do permit that. The vast majority of people said, gee, I'd like to be in maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days. It's kind of like a bell curve, which is probably intuitively what we would all expect. But the net effect of that is that you don't need 100%. If you're not going to have 100% of the people in the office all the time, you don't need 100% of the space. So we ultimately ended up in the middle of our RFP for space, pulling it back and sending it back out with about 25% less space required, 75% of the original. And that is in fact what we ended up with when we finally decided to move to 111 South Calvert has been reported. So we're at about 75% of what we would have needed without without the burden of COVID having occurred. And we think that's going to be great. We've been very, we've had great space planners working on it. And we have smaller spaces, but a ton of glass, a ton of visibility. All the exterior offices are going to have glass walls so that all the interior folks have views out, and the views are good in that space. So it's and the great thing about it is, Councilman Shelonda, that I think issues that people might have had, frankly, had COVID not occurred, like I need a bigger space, or where's all my stuff going to be, or what about all the things I've accumulated in the course of my life that are decorating my office. If you haven't used them or seen them in a year and a half, and in some cases that's the case, you probably don't need them. So I think we probably were going to have some pushback from people across the firm about reconfiguring the space. It's pretty hard to push back. So that's one very, very, very small upside. COVID has demonstrated to us that we don't need to be surrounded by all the stuff that we've been surrounded by. And we're just going to have people come in on a staggered schedule. We're still working our way through that. We're probably up to about every day 40-something%, something like that coming in. And that's going to continue to evolve. We've tried to set some guidelines, but we also have said decidedly that we're going to be extremely flexible and just respond to things as they evolve.
Thanks, John. I think you just inadvertently threw in a plug for the life-changing magic of tidying up by Marie Kondo just there. So excellent job. Greg, same question for you. You guys, Truist has offices and branches all throughout the region and the city. What's their status? What are you hearing from your folks in terms of teleworking or coming in every day?
Yeah. Couple things. First of all, Councilman, I don't think you've been to the Truist offices, so I hope you'll take my invitation to come visit us and see our space. I think you'd be impressed. It's also interesting listening to John, how many things he and his firm are thinking about are identical to what Truist has been going through as well. But let me start with just give you a lay of the land. First of all, our branches, our retail centers never closed during the pandemic. They never closed for a day. They were open from the get-go. They never closed. And really, if we have heroes at Truist, those branch teammates are right out at the top. Because you may recall when the pandemic first hit, people didn't know how it was transmitted. They didn't know a lot. But we had to be open. We did, at our branches. We had to service those retail and commercial customers and didn't have the luxury there to go remote. And so, been open, still open, and a credit to those Truist teammates. Now, for the rest of the workforce, they've largely been remote since the middle of of March. We have, on a voluntary basis, started to come back to the office. You see, I'm in the office today, and we probably have, I'm not even sure it's as much as 40% of our teammates back on any given day, probably somewhere between 20 and 30%, but it's totally on a voluntary basis. Our overarching belief is that we do our best work when we have the ability to collaborate in person. But first, and Jon mentioned this, we've got to make sure it's safe. So as we move forward, we'll continue, to monitor data from the federal government. Our next goal is kind of December 1st. And that is a date that we've targeted to start to bring more teammates back. It won't happen before then, and we'll kind of see what happens. We follow CDC guidance, obviously all state laws, local ordinances, things like that. And our decision will always be guided by what's in the best interest of our teammates and our guests and our visitors. But we're kind of targeting around that December timeframe to bring more folks back. One of the things that we've thought about is the reconfiguration of the office space. So we've consolidated 2 downtown office, the Heritage BB&T location on Calvert Street here, the Heritage SunTrust on 120 East Baltimore. And yeah, the reality was, as we went through the planning process during COVID, we realized we needed less space because people would no longer be coming into the office 5 days a week as maybe they once had. Some of our folks will, but most won't, and that's fine. And so we could do more with less. We also have a standard office size, and very, very few people at Truist have their own office. We have shared space. We have a reservation system. So teammates that are going to be in Tuesday and Thursday of next week have the ability to go online, make sure they've got a secure space. And that's the way we're approaching it. We've also constructed a lot of collaboration space where teammates, customers, guests can meet and do so and spread out in a socially distanced, responsible way, because we think that's really, really important. I think we want to create an inclusive and energizing environment that empowers our teammates to learn and grow and to enjoy the workspace. So we continually are taking a look at it. We also recognize that our folks desire balance, flexibility, and boundaries. And there isn't a one-size-fits-all at Truist. So each of our different areas have the right balance of flexibility coupled with expectations and kind of figure out what works for them. That is certainly a new practice, and it's one that I think our folks enjoy when we do come back to the office. It allows us to meet the needs of our stakeholders, our customers, our shareholders. So as we head into this hopefully post-pandemic world, I think the workspace looks different, and our teammates will work in the office in a different way than they have before, with a big focus on flexibility. And I heard Jon say that 2 or 3 times. So I think that's just the way of the world, and hey, that's great.
Oh, thanks, Greg. And if you check your inbox, I've already sent over an email to you. Looking forward to coming by to check out the new office digs and say hello to everyone and thank them in person for their commitment to downtown. And just a quick plug for our audience. If you have any questions, if you could please put those in the Q&A box at the bottom. I know we got 1 or 2 questions in there already. Greg, Jon, I want to shift a little bit over to workforce development. Jon, I know we talked a little bit about some of the newer attorneys or younger folks are looking for. Talk to us a little bit, and John, I want to start with you. How does a downtown location help you recruit employees? Is it a competitive advantage compared to, say, a suburban office park? What are you seeing on that front?
Yeah, Councilman, there are two questions connected there, right? Because the first is what we've been talking about, which is why is it important to be in person? And I think that we're gonna. So you have to establish why it's important. I think that people have been lulled a little bit into a false sense that it's really great to work remotely, et cetera. And unfortunately, we won't really start to see the negative impacts of that for a little while. And we have to, as managers, as leaders, we have to try and stay ahead of that. I'm just going to share with you very briefly. There's a quote that our firm chairman sent around quoting. So I'm quoting him, quoting Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan. And he said, noting the importance of getting back together, Dimon observed that, quote, remote work virtually eliminates spontaneous learning and creativity because you don't run into people at the coffee machine. He said, particularly, performing jobs remotely is more successful when people know one another and already have a large body of existing work to do. It does not work as well when people don't know one another. And I think that it just really resonated with me. We have new lawyers coming into this firm all the time, new staff coming in all the time. When we first started coming back here, there were people who we met when I came in on that first day to see who, the folks who were here on whatever staggered schedule. There were people I had never seen in person before who have worked here for a year. That can't be good. It can't be good. So we have to figure out how to allow people some flexibility, but also to get people together. You can't learn to be a lawyer without in-person mentoring at some level. And really, the more of it, the better. So you figure how to do it if you don't have quite as much as you used to. And just that water cooler creativity and human connection and team spirit and all of the things that make us better at what we do and better professionals are critically important. So I don't think that's a hard premise to establish. I think that some people are still fighting it, but I think we're all trying to find the balance. So now the question is, how does downtown affect that balance? And I would say to you that the very things that attracted people to downtown and to cities and to urban centers forever, without regard to COVID, are the kinds of things that are going to help us get people back to the office. The more interesting it is to be where you are, the more compelling reasons there are to leave your house in the comfort of your desk or your pajamas or whatever habit you have adopted over this period of time. The more there is to offer, the better, the more successful we're going to be. And at the end of the day, that's what cities, and particularly downtowns and center cities, provide. Now, I'm sure we'll talk about, how can we do that better? What's the best version of that in Baltimore? What are the things that we can do to fulfill that promise that downtowns and CBDs and places like this promise? But clearly, the more you have to offer, the better. So it's the classic thing about, you can go work in a suburban business park, and you're gonna have to get in your car and drive to lunch, except maybe there's a deli at the end of the strip center. And that's not what we have here. We have a vibrant environment where you can go down and go out and walk around and see people and experience a great American city and a great downtown. That's got to be appealing to people, and it's got to be part of the calculation when you're talking about what it takes to draw people from their comfortable at-home environments.
Thanks, John. Greg, how about for you and the team at Truist?
Yeah, and let me go back to something I said earlier. Keep in mind, Truist was created 3 months before the pandemic. So at the risk of overgeneralizing, literally half of our teammates didn't know who the other half were when the pandemic hit. And so in addition to new hires, which we've had, we've got this tremendous abundance of talent that we're probably not exploiting the way we'd like to, because flat out, it's just hard to get to know each other. It's hard to build relationships and trust on a Zoom call or a WebEx. So again, as I said earlier, we truly believe that in-person collaboration is absolutely essential. I think John just said the same thing. I would say it's maybe even more important for Truist, given the merger, than it might be for a company that didn't have that to go through. So both, let me just talk about now downtown and the need to be downtown, the need to be visible. Both heritage banks have long histories of being in the downtown area. Both SunTrust and BB&T have had their regional headquarters downtown. So that was kind of an established practice, but you're right, the merger gave us an opportunity to look at everything. And we felt it was critically important to be downtown and have a strong visible presence. Downtown is the core of our community, and it's important for us, I think, to demonstrate our commitment. But what's important? Well, we've got a lot of our teammates who live downtown, who are committed to downtown. And yeah, the thought of them getting in a car and driving out somewhere in the suburbs just didn't ring true to me. But it's a community, Councilman, and as such, we look forward to the day when people return to the office post-pandemic. The restaurants, the bars, the hotels, all of the venues are back open again, and that vibrant community comes to life post-pandemic. And I think when that happens, and we saw it before the pandemic, this is a very desirable place to be. It's a great city. We're all proud of it. And our teammates like being here. They want it to be safe. They want it to be clean, but they want it to be vibrant. They want it to be alive. And that'll be really important as we look into the future.
Greg, you made me think of two of my cousins who got married during the pandemic. And I come from a very large extended family, and both of their spouses do. They both had very small ceremonies because of the pandemic. And, after things calm down, we're going to come back for the larger extended celebration, and just thinking about, how exciting that's going to be to get everybody together. I think kind of heard your same passion in terms of how excited you are to get, all those folks together. Again, and folks who haven't met yet. I want to talk a little bit about intangibles. The both of you have lived in the region for some time, are incredibly involved in our community. From your perspective, is there room for loyalty or hometown pride in business anymore? And more specifically, does the soul of a place matter?
Greg, would you like to lead off?
Sure, John. I'll take a stab at that. So absolutely, there is a place for loyalty and hometown pride. I hope that's come across this morning. Like John, I'm part of an organization that spans a big part of the country, and we're located in some of the greatest cities, Charlotte, Atlanta, Dallas, etc. And nothing gives me more pride than to talk about what we're doing here in Baltimore. I saw 4 decades ago what happened when Harbor Place was created, and the energy that it brought to downtown. And the next thing we knew, there were hotels. There was the great aquarium. I see they're on the call today. Great shout out to John Racanelli and his group for what they've done. It was, Oriole Park, M&T Bank Stadium, all are a source of pride. We've got world-class healthcare organizations here in Baltimore that I think we don't give enough shout outs to. We just saw, although it wasn't in downtown, the BMW Classic and all of the positivity it brought to our region. So I'm an absolute unabashed believer in Baltimore and what it has, the character and what it represents. And you bet there's a big place for hometown pride, at least as far as we're concerned here at Truist.
We are not very good at recognizing all the good things that we have here. And, so many of the issues that we're facing downtown are either being faced by every downtown and every city across the country because of COVID and the effect that it's had on people coming to work. We're not, so it's a little bit hard to know what's the cart and what's the horse. I mean, I think we can talk about things that probably we need to work on, but I think some of those issues will get worked on simply by the fact that people come back. So you want to do certain things to get people to come back. You want to get people to come back, and those things will start to take care of themselves. It's kind of an upward spiral, if you will. So I think we've got to figure out how to kind of keep both of those going at the same time. But soul, I mean, Baltimore is all about, soul and neighborhoods and feeling like you're part of the place. And downtown is just an extraordinary neighborhood, as we know, and Shelonda knows the numbers, Councilman, you do too, about the number of people who live here. And then you have this giant commercial sector that exists here, the professional sector, the service sector, the tourist sector, and everything else. So it is both a neighborhood like the other 200 and some odd neighborhoods that the city has, but it is unique because it's a physical crossroads for the city. It is where it is geographically. I think I have my little city map back behind me on the wall, and we're right in the middle of everything. It is a public facing neighborhood like arguably no other neighborhood is in the city, and it represents a gigantic investment by the real estate sector, by the corporate sector, by the institutional sector. All of those things are going on here in Baltimore. So, and in downtown. So we have to find a way to realize what the great opportunities are, to continue to accelerate our investment and development in this area, and to make it a place that works for all Baltimoreans, including the folks in my law firm who may be here during the day, as well as folks in my law firm who are here 24/7 because they live downtown. So it's a question of trying to get to be, talk about how it's hard for something to be all things to all people, and maybe nothing can be all things to all people, but downtown has a tremendous opportunity to be lots of things to lots of people at the very least. And I think in that regard, it's uniquely suited, and there are opportunities for us to do that. And I think we have to figure out what those are, and with the leadership of the partnership and you, Councilman, and with the mayor and others, we need to get to work on firming those things up and putting our best foot forward.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Greg. And there's a reason why I asked that question to the two of you specifically, just because I know that energy and passion that you have for Baltimore and just for downtown. So I know we've got a number of great questions coming in from our audience. Shelonda, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much for the transition. And it's a wealth of questions. They go across a sort of myriad of areas. I'm going to sort of skip to the bottom a little bit. And part of it is, as I read some of the questions, that, sort of the elephant in the room about downtown and what's happening. And part of the reason we've even launched the Double Down on Downtown campaign is we know that while there's tremendous assets, there's some areas we really need to hone in on together collectively and figure out how we make those things better. Looking at Michelle Welly's question, she says, are you guys getting pushback from employees who've been productive kind of working from home, and now they may be looking at the cost of parking or transit challenges or any of those obstacles with returning to office downtown? So, and I'll go to you first, John, if I can.
Sure. Not really, not in any significant way. I mean, obviously, in some respects, it's less expensive not to come to the office, but I think that people understand that everybody wants to see people. I mean, there's a tremendous hunger for getting back together and seeing people. And remember that people are likely to be here less than 5 days, except the people who want to be here for 5 days, and that's fine too. So I think those costs can be mitigated. And at the end of the day, I think the things that I just talked about, the fellow from JP Morgan, I mean, those are overriding concerns, and we will address those kinds of one-off issues as they come up, and address questions or issues that people might have. But overall, I think people are excited at the idea of being downtown. I will say it helps to have a brand new office on the horizon. I mean, I think I said this in some of the press coverage. It's a great time to have something like that to look forward to, because it's not just coming back, it's coming back and sort of packing up over the next few months and then moving to some place that we think is going to be really fresh and new and exciting. So, that's just good luck in a way, for the timing for us to have that happening as we're trying to get people to come back and be excited about being back in the downtown.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah. So the realities are that a commute's a commute, parking is real, but most of our teammates did that without really thinking of it pre-pandemic. Our teammates absolutely want to see each other, and that fondness grows every day, and they want to see customers, and they want to see them in person, not on via WebEx. So you've got that. What we're trying to share with our folks is why coming downtown is good for them, why it's good for their careers. Maybe you're a young banker that needs mentorship. Maybe you're in a client-facing situation and you need the collaboration of other teammates.
Right.
You want to be close to a really good lawyer at Ballard Spahr and need to be in close proximity to them, and you want to talk to them in person or over coffee. So there's a really lots of reasons that it's good for the teammate and for us. I think the key is to make sure they know about the flexibility. So yeah, they generally don't want to come back 5 days a week. And for a client-facing teammate, they probably shouldn't be in the office 5 days a week. But on some basis where they can reestablish those connections, establish new ones, interact and collaborate, and do it in a flexible manner. Yeah, they're looking forward to it. Absolutely.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And a couple things as we sort of talk about it, I'd like to share some areas that I know even with Downtown Partnership we're doing, and it sort of falls on key points that we've been hearing consistently from the business community. When we heard about parking, one of the things that we started working with the Parking Authority and the Baltimore Parking Association to figure out how we work to align parking opportunities with what the needs are. So what you will see coming out that didn't exist previously was flexible parking passes and things so that people don't have to be in the office and pay for 7-day-a-week or 5-day-a-week parking so that people can. So it's hearing some of these things and creating these forms that allow us to also make adjustments. Another sort of big area that we hear, of course, is safety, especially when you start to talk about what's happening downtown. I don't know if everybody knows, but we had engaged a public safety task force. We have a forum. We have at Downtown Partnership really doubled down even on safety efforts. Tom Agris, my chief of operations management, has instituted along with Bill Marcus a system where we're looking at data so that we could be a lot more proactive. And we see the trends down. We know that those are challenges, but part of what I'm excited about and why it's great to have you guys here and to have the partnership with the mayor's office and police department all working together, because that's the only way we're going to solve it. These problems didn't come with COVID. I think it may have exacerbated some, but one of the sort of benefits that I've seen come out of COVID is collaboration, unlike I have in my lifetime. And so I thank you both. And I thank you for the people who are on here. We're trying to figure all of these things out. We know what the barriers are. Now it's how do we work together to start to figure out some of those solutions. Quick question from Sue, and she had, are you guys, is the mask mandate a hindrance, a help, or anything? How are your employees responding to that? Greg, I'll go with you first.
Okay. I lose track of time, it seems, but this summer when the Delta variant started to raise its ugly head again, we went to a mask mandate in our offices. And if we go out to visit clients, we've got to mask up. With the exceptions, just to let you know, I'm not circumventing the rules, are if you're in an enclosed office by yourself, you don't have to have a mask. If you're in a restaurant eating or drinking, you can take your mask down, but otherwise you just have your mask on. And you know, a year ago, I think that would have been a real challenge. Our teammates, I am going to a full day conference of folks at Truist, and we'll wear masks for 8 straight hours. And you know, it's what you have to do.
Normal, right?
I'd say we've adapted. It's a necessary precaution, and I think we see the value in it. We probably long for the day when you don't have to do it, but it's not as big an issue as it was, let's say, a year ago.
In the interest of getting to other questions, I just say basically same here. We're following the law, we're following the rules, we're being safe. We wish we didn't have to do it, but we do it, and it is what it is. And it will someday it will be over.
Well, the hope, thank you. The hope is as we get further down with these vaccines, it gets a little bit easier. I know some of the protections went beyond us in there. So thank you both for that. With the changes in your office space and day-to-day sort of staffing needs, do you see opportunities for the creation of more sort of flex spaces or other things that you can do to create excitement within the office, or, you know, for newer and maybe smaller business opportunities? And John,
I don't know if this is what the question is. I will say that in our space planning, we have, by I don't even know how many times, increased the size of our common space, our cafe space, which at the moment is a fairly modest internal space. And the new space, it will be much larger, on a corner, full windows, brightly lit. You know, want to encourage people. We've had great experience in other offices with people using that space for collaboration, not just like to go have lunch, but like, let's, you know, everybody has a laptop. So now we'll take our laptop, we'll go in there and we'll sit and work. And the nice thing for us is that we've seen, on one hand, we have seen across this firm, because it's large enough, a few people who have done these things and we've learned from them. And I think people are now going to learn from us a little bit too about hoteling, and you know, we didn't talk about that, but we will have fewer offices than we strictly have lawyers. That's part of the balance. So people are not only going to have to give up you know, maybe square footage, but are also going to have to adjust to the idea that you may not if you're coming in one day a week, you're not going to have an office that's your office
right,
you know, every day. There will always be a place for you to be here. But so we're trying to keep up with and even stay ahead of all of those things, and including the best possible working environment, because frankly, the nicer it's going to be at the office, the more likely people are going to be to come in.
right. Greg, are you seeing similar?
Yeah, absolutely. I share this. About 6 years ago, Heritage SunTrust adopted a hoteling platform, and I can say, having witnessed it, it was an abysmal failure. It just didn't work. Teammates viewed not having their own office, you know, with the diploma and all the golf trophies, you know, that didn't work. So once again, COVID changed the whole calculus.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been working from their dining room tables. Probably like you all, I've seen closets, I've seen workrooms, I've seen garages. You know, your office is now your laptop, probably, and it really doesn't need to be a traditional office any longer. So the whole concept of shared space is now, I think, far more accepted, far more common. It's what we've gone to. But yeah, to John's point also, we've also created a lot of shared space, so that you're giving the vehicle for collaboration, whether it be a couple of folks, 5 people, whether it be while they're eating lunch or having coffee in the morning. It's really important to make those available and plentiful. And they weren't always that way in the past. So yeah, things have definitely changed, Shelonda.
Thank you for that. This might be I don't know if it's easy, hard, or private, but we have a couple questions on here that are talking about you guys' vaccine policies. You know, some organizations are mandating it, some you have to or get tested. Are you at liberty to share your policies?
Sure. Firm-wide, we have a mandatory vaccination policy with legally required exceptions for religious or medical reasons. And you know, we debated it, we discussed it. You can imagine, like every organization, there was some push and pull. What will be the consequences? That's what we've adopted. We also have the same mandate for people visiting the office. Again, these are not easy choices always, but at the end of the day, as Greg said earlier, safety is absolutely paramount, and we're going to be responsible to our people and to the people who visit. And that's the decision we've made. It has not caused a problem in Baltimore, and I'm glad we made the decision.
Thank you so much, John. Greg?
Yeah, Shelonda, let me preface it by our whole approach to COVID continues to evolve as it has since March of last year. Right now, there is no mandate to get vaccinated. We are encouraging. We are doing our best to educate our teammates on the benefits of the vaccine, but it's not required as of today.
Got you. Thank you. And I think to your point, Greg, everybody continues to evolve. Our policy around COVID, I feel like is changing on a daily basis as we get new information. We probably have time for one question. And this question is really probably the hardest hit, I think, for some of the people who are on the line. And I spoke with both of you early in your decisions around whether or not you were going to stay. Right. I mean, where you were going to make your headquarters, where you were going to relocate here, and both of you made the decision to do that. And so I am appreciative solely. But I know we want others to make that call too. We want the suburban dwellers to come back down. We want people to be excited about downtown. And we have at Downtown Partnership, in partnership with Costello and the city and all, really taking that as our number one priority to figure out how we make that happen. You know, for your teams, I know you've talked to them, tell us, you know, what are some of the ways and things you're hearing and things that, you know, push back on us that, you know, we need to do, because our job is to make this better. We know it's not there yet, but we want to get there. So, you know, let us know from what you're hearing, seeing, experiencing, some of the things that we could do to help this be back to that, you know, destination of choice again. Greg, you want to start with it, but keep it easy no, I'm just kidding. No, and I know this is one of those ones for us, but it's important that, you know, we don't want to paint, it's not all Pollyanna, but it is what we have committed to do in here. And it's something that, you know, I love our city for, our resilience. I love our city for all of those things.
I mean, Greg, shall I go, or would you like to?
Go ahead, John, all yours.
Yeah, look, I do not want to work in Disney World.
Yeah.
But I want the environment to be, as Greg said earlier, safe and clean and appealing and vital and activated. We all know what we're trying to get to. I really do think that some of those issues, again, chicken and the egg, will be better when we get more people coming downtown, and that will happen naturally as we work through it. But that does not excuse the city. It doesn't excuse the council, it doesn't excuse the partnership, and it doesn't excuse any of us who are stakeholders, leaders, engaged in downtown in trying to accelerate addressing those issues. And they're complicated. Some of them involve legal issues. Some of them, you know, we all know, you know, there are constitutional issues about people's rights to exist, and, you know, human beings who are here in the city, whether it's our fellow homeless citizens. You've got the squeegee kids issue. We know what these issues are. We just have to figure out how to address them. And we need, two things, and I'll defer to Greg. It is, on one hand, holding people's feet to the fire, meaning the city, the partnership, et cetera. But it is also all hands on deck. It is not about expecting the city to solve all these problems. It has to be a partnership of all of us stakeholders, all the people who have the ability to do this. And I'm confident that we can get downtown back where it needs to be. We all just have to kind of get in the boat and row together. And I think we'll see tremendous progress. I'll defer to Greg.
Yep.
Yeah, John, well put. You know, it is important to be realistic about the challenges. If we not, we'll lose credibility. But none of these problems are insurmountable. And, you know, something I think John said earlier, I think is important. We sometimes beat ourselves up and we don't talk about the great things that are going on in the central business district, in the city. And to some degree, I think it's also changing the narrative to focus on those things and not just the issues, while not minimizing or disregarding or hoping they go away or hoping Councilman Costello takes care of the problem and or the mayor. But let's not forget all the great stuff that is happening here and make sure it's getting its fair share of airtime.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that leads in, I know we're at the end of time. I thank you so much, but it leads into really our efforts around our new marketing effort. It is about telling those good stories. It's not to say that other stuff doesn't, but man, we have some great stuff to tell. And quite often we're just on our heels responding as opposed to showcasing. It's a balance. Crime trends are going down. Things are happening in the right direction. And you're right, it's going to happen together. So I thank you all for that. Councilman Costello, I know we're out of time. I didn't know if it was anything you wanted to come back and say at the end.
It's great to be back. John, Greg, Ballard Spahr, Truist, thank you.
If there's any sort of takeaway in our rapid partnership, we're in this thing together. Our sort of hashtag of our campaign, big dreamers, never quitters. It's what we are. It's who we are. It makes us us. And so I just thank you guys for the partnership and doing it. What I commit to you is from the partnership's perspective, we're in this for the long haul. We are doubling down. Our team is working hard all around the clock. And so I thank you. I look forward to seeing you guys on November 4th at our real estate reception. Shout out to my board chair, Mark Wasserman. And I saw several board members who were on here, my team, my staff, Mike, Nicole, Lauren, shout out. You make it look easy for Councilman Costello and I. John and Greg, you were phenomenal as always. I thank you for the partnership and just know that we're here. We're going to, all of the things that we committed along the way, we're right here with you in full force. So thank you all. Please, this recording will be on our YouTube page later today. All of the recordings from our webinars, go downtownbaltimore.com. See you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.